The wind came off the flats like a living thing, cutting and cold, carrying the smell of sage and old snow. When the knock sounded on her door, not loud, not begging, just steady enough to say the hand behind it still had strength left, she paused with the lamp half raised, heart thumping the way it had not since the winter her husband never came home. The ranch lay quiet beyond the window, barn hunched against the dark, horses shifting in their stalls, and the thought pressed in on her that no one came this way after sundown unless trouble rode with them. She set the lamp down, reached for the latch, then stopped, breathing through the fear that told her to stay silent and let the night swallow whoever stood outside. He was tall in the doorway, hat pulled low, shoulders dusted white from the blowing powder, beard rimmed with ice, eyes the color of creek water under shade. He did not step forward, did not tip his hat, just stood as if the boards beneath his boots might give way. "Ma'am," he said, voice rough as a dry draw. "My horse threw a shoe, and the storm took my trail." She kept one hand on the door and one on the frame, the rule of the range ringing clear in her head. Lone women did not invite strangers inside. "Not after dark, not ever. You can't stay here," she said, the words coming out firm even as her gaze slid to his hands, empty, chapped, shaking a little from cold or hunger or both. He nodded as if he had expected that answer, eyes dropping to the threshold. "I'll sleep in the lean-to if you'll have me," he said. "Won't trouble you none." The wind shoved at his back, pushing snow into the kitchen. She smelled the horse before she saw it, a dark shape shifting near the fence, ribs showing through winter coat. The mare stamped and blew, and something in that sound cracked her resolve. She thought of the times she had begged the sky for mercy, of nights she had waited for a knock that never came. "I can give you coffee," she said, and heard how thin it sounded. "Then you go on at first light." He met her eyes then, gratitude flaring quick and bright before he hid it. She stepped aside just enough, did not close the door. Inside, the warmth hit him like a wave. He stopped short, boots dripping, hat still on. "You can set it there," she said, pointing to the mat. The lamp threw his shadow long across the floor. It looked like another man standing between them. Silent and watchful, she busied herself with the kettle, hands steady by habit, not by ease. "Name's Eli," he offered. Eli Crow. She did not give hers. The stove hissed, the wind howled, and the space between them filled with all the things left unsaid. When he took the cup, their fingers brushed. A spark, quick and gone, but it set her pulse racing all the same. He drank like a man who knew how to make things last. Small sips, eyes on the steam. She leaned against the counter, measuring him, the scar at his jaw, the way his shoulders eased as the heat sank in. Not a boy, not yet old. The kind of man the trail shaped hard and honest, or broke outright. "Storm will blow through by morning," she said, more hope than knowledge. He nodded. "If the shoe holds," he replied. "If not, I'll walk her slow." She pictured him out there, white world swallowing hoof and boot alike, and the words slipped free before she could stop them. "There's room by the stove," she said, then added quickly, "just till dawn." His head came up, surprise plain. "I won't crowd you," he said. She turned away, ashamed of the relief she felt at that promise. The night stretched, the lamp burned low. He settled on the floor with his back to the stove, hat over his eyes, boots lined neat as if order could hold the dark at bay. She sat at the table, pretending to mend a tear she had fixed twice already. The wind eased, then rose again. Each gust testing the hinges. She thought of her husband, of how he used to sleep by that same stove after long days. The shape of Eli there brought a twist of grief and something else she did not name. When he spoke again it was soft. "You don't have to watch me," he said. "I won't take more than you've given." She did not answer, but she did not bar the door either. Some time past the deepest dark, the mare whinnied, a sharp sound that pulled them both awake. Eli was on his feet in a breath, hand raised as if to calm a skittish soul. "It's all right," she said, though she was not sure who she meant it for. He pulled on his coat, stepped to the doorway, and checked the latch. Snow piled high. Moon, a pale coin behind cloud. He came back in, shook the white from his sleeves, and paused. "Thank you," he said, simple, honest, the kind of thanks that carried weight. She nodded, words stuck behind the tightness in her throat. The door stood open a crack, letting in the cold and the quiet. Dawn felt far away, but it waited all the same. She rose, added wood to the fire, watched the flames take hold. The ranch breathed around them, old boards creaking, a life held together by work and will. She knew the rules, knew the risks. Yet as she looked at the man by her stove, at the door she had not closed, she felt the stir of something she thought the prairie had taken from her for good. The night did not end with answers, only with a promise, unspoken and fragile as frost, that come morning, things would not be the same. Even if he rode out and never looked back, dawn came slow and pale, the kind that seeped into the world instead of arriving. She was awake before the light, listening to the stove crackle and the wind finally loosen its grip. Eli still slept on the floor, one arm flung out as if he had been reaching for something even in dreams. She watched him longer than she meant to, noticing the lines time and weather had carved around his eyes, the steady rise and fall of his chest. It felt strange to share a morning with another soul after so many years of silence. When he stirred, she turned back to the pan, bacon hissing, the smell filling the kitchen with something close to comfort. "Morning," he said, voice rough with sleep. She answered without looking at him, afraid of what she might see reflected there. The door was still unlatched, sunlight slipping through the crack like a quiet witness. They ate with the easy restraint of people who did not know the rules between them yet. He spoke of the trail in pieces, cattle driven north last fall, a partner lost to fever in a river town, work that dried up when winter came early. She offered little in return, only that the ranch had been hers since her husband died, that the land did not care for grief but demanded tending all the same. When he mentioned leaving, the words settled heavy in the room. He stood to fetch his coat, paused. "Your fence down by the south drawer is busted," he said. "Saw it last night." She frowned. That fence had been mended before snow. "Could be the storm," she said, already counting the hours it would take. He hesitated, then spoke the thing that had been hovering between them since the knock. "I could fix it," he said. "Work for my keep." She straightened, met his gaze, the rulebook rattling again in her mind. "You can't stay here," she said, just as before, but this time the words lacked their edge, and again she did not close the door. By mid-morning they were out in the cold light, breath steaming, the land stretched wide and honest, white melting back to reveal brown grass and stubborn earth. Eli worked with quiet efficiency, hands sure with wire and post. She watched from the fence line, pretending to inspect boards while stealing glances at him. It had been a long time since another man's presence did not feel like an intrusion. The ranch itself seemed to notice him, horses lifting their heads, the old dog trotting closer, tail wagging once. Then again, "He doesn't warm easy," she said of the dog. Eli smiled, a small thing, but it hit her harder than she expected. Memories came unbidden, her husband laughing in this same drawer, promising repairs tomorrow that never came. When the fence stood straight again, Eli stepped back, satisfied. "That'll hold," he said, wiping his hands. She thanked him. The words simple, the meaning not. Trouble rode in with the noon sun, a rider cresting the ridge like a dark thought. She recognized him before he reached the gate. Tom Harlan, neighbor by distance, not by kindness. His eyes went first to Eli, then back to her, a slow smile curling. "Didn't know you were taking on help," he said, voice thick with implication. She felt heat rise in her chest. "He's passing through," she replied. Eli said nothing, but his stance shifted, subtle, protective. Tom's gaze lingered on the open door behind them. "Careful," he said, "talk gets around." With that he turned his horse and left dust and unease in his wake. The quiet that followed pressed close. She realized how quickly the world judged a woman alone, how little grace it offered. She looked at Eli. "You should go," she said, sharp now, fear making it so. He studied her, then nodded once. Packing was quick. He did not have much to begin with. She handed him bread wrapped in cloth, coffee in a small tin. Their fingers touched again, lingered this time. "You don't owe me," she said, as much to herself as him. He shook his head. "I do," he answered. "For more than a meal." Outside, the mare stamped, eager and thin. He swung into the saddle, the ranch stretching behind her like a question. "If I come this way again," he began. She cut him off. "You can't stay here," she repeated, but her voice softened at the end. He smiled then, a full smile that warmed something deep inside her. "I know," he said, and rode out. She watched until the land swallowed him, the door at her back wide open, letting the cold and the ache in together. Days passed with a new weight to them. Work filled the hours, mending, feeding, counting stores, yet her thoughts strayed down the road he had taken. She scolded herself for it. The prairie did not reward foolish hope. Still, Small signs unsettled her. The dog waited by the gate at dusk. The horses shied at nothing, and each night she left the door unlatched, telling herself it was for air, for habit, not for a man who might never return. Tom Harlan came by again, comments sharper, eyes colder. She answered him with clipped politeness, but fear gnawed at her resolve. Alone meant vulnerable. It always had. A week after the storm, trouble made itself plain. She found the south fence torn again, not by weather this time, wire cut clean, tracks leading away, cattle scattered into the draw. Anger steadied her hands where fear had failed. She worked until dusk, but numbers did not add up. She would need help, and there was only one name her mind supplied. She hated that it felt like a prayer. Night settled, stars sharp and unforgiving. She stood in the doorway, looking out, the wind carrying distant hoofbeats, or maybe only memory. The door stayed open. When the knock came, it did not surprise her. Heart racing, she lifted the lamp, crossed the room, and opened the door before caution could speak. Eli stood there again, travel-worn, eyes searching her face. "I heard about your fence," he said, as if that explained everything. She laughed then, a short, broken sound that tasted like relief. "You can't stay here," she said, one last time, and stepped aside, leaving the door wide. The night and all its consequences welcome in. The night took on a different weight once he crossed the threshold again. Not the sharp edge of fear, but the heavy quiet of choice. Eli set his pack down slow, as if giving her time to change her mind. The lamp cast a softer light now, familiar, almost kind. She closed the door against the wind, but not against him. The latch clicked and echoed louder than it should have, both of them hearing it for what it was, not an ending but a beginning. "Fence wasn't the only thing wrong," he said finally, voice low. "Harlan's been pushing stock that ain't his." She stiffened, anger flaring hot. She had suspected as much. Missing calves, strange tracks. The land remembered even when people pretended not to. "I won't be run off my own place," she said. Lifting her chin, he met her gaze with something like respect. "Then you shouldn't stand alone," he replied, and the truth of it settled between them, solid and unavoidable. Morning came hard and fast, work waiting like a reckoning. They rode the south draw together, frost breaking under hoof. Eli pointed out signs she had half seen and half ignored. Cut wire hidden under brush, bootprints turned wrong to fool the eye. By noon they had gathered most of the scattered cattle, sweat cutting tracks through dust on their faces. She felt alive in a way that startled her, the rhythm of shared labor easing old aches. When they returned, Tom Harlan stood by the corral, arms crossed, smile thin as wire. Words flew sharp, accusations and half-truths, but Eli did not flinch, laid out facts plain and steady, the kind that left no room to wriggle free. Neighbors arrived one by one, drawn by raised voices and the promise of trouble. The range had its own justice, slow but certain, and by the time the sun dipped, Harlan rode away under watchful eyes, his power broken like a bad branch. She let out a breath she felt she had been holding for years. That evening they sat on the porch, boots off, watching the sky burn itself out in red and gold. The land stretched calm and patient, as if it had been waiting for this moment to exhale. "You could go now," she said, not unkindly. "No one would blame you." Eli turned the idea over before answering. "I could," he agreed, "but I don't want to." Silence followed, not awkward, just full. She thought of all the nights she had told herself survival meant solitude, that keeping the door closed kept the pain out, yet here he was, proof that some pains came from emptiness too. "Staying won't be easy," she warned. "This place takes more than it gives." He smiled faintly. "So does the trail," he said. They spoke late into the night, not of grand promises but of small truths, where he had been, where she had hurt, what they feared becoming if they chose wrong. The stars wheeled overhead, indifferent and eternal, when at last she rose. She did not point him to the stove. Instead she gestured down the hall, to the room that had been closed since winter took her husband. Dust stirred as the door opened, grief and memory breathing out together. "You can stay here," she said, voice steady despite the tremor beneath. Eli did not rush, did not claim the space. He simply nodded, understanding the weight of the gift. The door to that room stayed open, letting the past and present share the same air. Days turned into weeks, the ranch settling into a new rhythm. Eli mended more than fence and roof. He listened, he waited, he learned the shape of her silences. She learned his laughter returned in pieces, At first surprising, then welcome. Neighbors adjusted their glances, suspicion fading into acceptance. The land itself seemed to approve. Grass greening early, calves strong, the dog following Eli as if he had always belonged. Some nights she woke fearing it would vanish come dawn, but each morning he was there, coffee on the stove, door open to the day. One evening, as spring finally claimed the hills, she stood in the doorway watching him work the yard, light catching in his hair, and understood what had changed. The door was no longer left open out of uncertainty or habit. It was open because she chose it to be, because she had learned that safety was not the absence of risk, but the presence of trust. When he looked up and caught her watching, he tipped his hat, a quiet acknowledgement of all that had passed between them without needing words. She joined him outside, hand finding his, natural as breathing. The wind moved, gentle now, carrying the scent of thawed earth and promise. "Funny thing," she said. "I told you twice you couldn't stay." He squeezed her fingers. "You never closed the door," he answered. They smiled then, the kind of smile earned, not given, built from storms weathered and choices made. And so the ranch stood, boards creaking, fences straight, a light burning warm against the dark. The door open not to just anyone, but to the life she had decided to live, the prairie stretching wide and unforgiving as ever, yet holding, at its heart, a place where two people chose to stand together, come wind, come winter, come whatever the road might bring.